Hello everyone and welcome to Hidden Existence. And tonight, well, I've got a really good show tonight. I've been looking forward to this one. I've got with me Arizona Squatch, who is Kevin, and his friends Scott and Chuck. How you doing?
We're doing good.
Good to have you here tonight.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Now, you're all connected to tonight's, what we're going to talk about tonight. Scott, you're Kevin's neighbour, and Chuck, you're Kevin's friend. And do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself first, Chuck, about how you got into Bigfoot and how you got to know Kevin?
Yeah, I've always been interested in oddball topics, ghosts, the paranormal, that kind of thing, and UFOs, and Bigfoot was kind of a part of that. I live about 80 miles north of where Kevin lives. Kevin lives in the Metro Phoenix area, and I live up in a little town up in the mountains. And when the show Finding Bigfoot came out, I got to watching that, and it kind of made me wonder. I was very skeptical. I didn't think they could possibly exist, but I was open-minded enough, and I started doing a little bit of research, and I found out that the area that I lived was a hot spot. And so I got interested in the phenomenon and ended up going out, having experiences. I did my research initially, then I went out, and fortunately the very first night operation I went out on, we got approached and had an experience. And so I've started that at about 2011. And then in 2013, I became a BFRO investigator. And that was indirectly how I ended up meeting Kevin. And so I've been doing this now for 9 years and had some absolutely amazing, incredible experiences.
Yeah, and you were saying before that your perception of what Bigfoot is has changed from when you first started to now.
Yeah, I went from being skeptical about whether they could even exist to knowing that they existed, but not knowing for sure what they are. I was firmly in the flesh and blood camp for a long time, thinking they were just a clever ape-like creature of some kind. And then over the last couple or 3 years, especially since Kevin and I started researching together, our research has pushed us clear across the line into the paranormal, and it's been absolutely amazing.
And Scott, you've been witness to some of this as well. You've not, well, tell us about how you got to tag along with Kevin.
Well, I've when I moved in, I've known Kevin for about 7.5 years, 8 years now or so, and best neighbor I've ever had, by the way. And and so that's from when Kevin started his investigations, from when it started, even the experiences he had as a child. He told me about that, and when he went on a family outing, and that's where everything started, was from this family outing. And I've been hearing about everything. I've got to hear the audio. And then at a certain point, we said, hey, let's go out. When I have the time, I have 3 kids and a wife. So sometimes it's hard to get out, but I do what I can. And I've been witness to, shimmering images, and I've had a nighttime sighting and twinkle lights, and actually hearing the communication. And it's definitely blown my mind. I've always been interested in the paranormal, but it's Bigfoot, ghosts, and things of that nature, and it's definitely blown my mind, just from seeing Kevin grow and hearing everything from, hey, I think it's this, and he as he progresses in his thoughts and ideas and research, and how it changes, and from what it was then and what it is now. It's been an experience, and I'm happy I've been along for the ride.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in Kevin's encounters, and we've done 2 interviews already, haven't we, on the researcher's report?
Yeah.
But now that you've got 2 people with you who have experienced this makes it even more, I'm not saying credible, but more exciting, that you can now have someone, some other people to verify what you're saying, who are witnessing what you're seeing. And as you said, you can't explain what it is, but you've seen this stuff, aren't you? I'll let you start anyway with how this all started for you.
All right. Well, just a quick rundown. In the early '80s, probably '81, 1982, somewhere in there, on a backpack trip with the Boy Scouts in Central Arizona, we had what I can only call as an encounter. At the time, we didn't know what it was, but we had a big rock thrown into our camp. Scout leaders were asleep, and us boys were up talking, and the rock come flying and hit just right behind where I was. And this was a rock that was probably about that big, and so we're screaming, scout leaders to get up, and threw all of our wood on the fire, and scout leaders are kind of laughing at us going, you guys need to go to sleep. You're just hearing critters out there. And like, no, you don't understand. And, nothing had happened for a little bit, and scout leaders had gone back to sleep, and, we're sitting there scared out of our pants. And, then we can hear footsteps coming down the hill, big, heavy bipedal steps, woof, woof, right towards us. And, we start screaming again. And, so this went on throughout the night, and the scout leaders were getting a little frustrated with us. And until the last time that we woke them up, had a pretty good sized tree get broke, real loud whack. And, that got their attention. And one of them takes out a .44 Magnum, fires a shot up in the air. And then you hear running away. And once it got a little ways away, it was this, so they're like, don't ever talk about this to anybody again. Like, yeah, right, whatever. And I couldn't say it was Bigfoot, but what I could tell you is it wasn't a bear, it wasn't an elk, I could tell you what it wasn't, but because we didn't put eyes on this thing, I wasn't going to say it was Bigfoot. Here in Arizona, it's known as the Mogollon Monster. And, Bigfoot lived in the Pacific Northwest, not in Central Arizona. And, so as years go on, and, would just reflect back on that. And when Finding Bigfoot came out, the TV show, it sparked a big interest. And so every time we'd go out camping, we'd go look for footprints and, do the Finding Bigfoot thing, because I didn't know what I was doing, and, just going off of what I saw on TV. Until it was June of 2017, we were on our annual family camp out, and my son and I were out, investigating, looking around, and we found a footprint and got all excited, and found another footprint, got even more excited. And, then we had a couple of wood knocks, and, we did some knocks back. And I'm not going to go real deep into the details of this, because I don't want to waste all the time on it. But we had left and got home, and it took me about a week and a half, and I finally decided I was going to make a report with the BFRO because of everything that had happened on this trip. And about a week, week and a half later, you contacted me?
Yeah, something like that. I was out of town at the time when the report came in, and then when I got back, I contacted you.
And, so we decided to, set up a time to go meet up there and spend a few nights up there. And so we did. And that my life has changed from that moment on.
Okay, so tell us about what's been happening then now, or talk about the shimmering.
Well, it's when we first started going out, and it was you'd hear a knock, or you'd hear rock clacks, and and we could hear them walking around the camp. And that first night we were out, Chuck actually had a sighting that night that he was watching one, and it just amazing stuff going on. And it just started getting weird. Yeah, so after that trip, the whole way home, it's from the campsite to where I live is about 2.5 hours. And, I just driving that whole trip, trying to process, what I had just experienced. And, I was addicted from that moment. And I told my wife when I got home, I said, I'm going back up. She goes, well, when? I said, in a couple of days. So it was probably about 4 days later, and I was back up there for about another week. And that's when I got my first Mindspeak, and I didn't realize that that's what was going on. I was down in what I call SQUATCH Valley. I'd found a footprint in a structure, and I was walking around and come across a pretty good sized rattlesnake. And me, typically, my personality is I'm eating you for dinner. I love rattlesnake. And so I'm looking at this snake and I'm thinking dinner. And then I get this thought in my head that wasn't my own. It was, why do you want to kill him? I said, well, I want to eat him. Well, what gives you the right to take his life? Well, because I'm going to eat him. Well, look how beautiful he is. Look how old he is, and it just kind of, this conversation I was having with myself, but it wasn't thoughts that would, that I would normally be having. I wouldn't be thinking with myself, I'm going to eat you. Why? No, yes. That's, just not my normal train of thought. And I'd actually taken out my phone and I was videotaping this rattlesnake. And as soon as I hit the stop and turned off the record, from probably about 25, 30 yards away from me, the most powerful set of vocals I have ever heard in my life. It was, what do you want? Just like that. And hair on the back of my neck stands up, and, I got chills, and I'm like, well, hello, my friend. Ha! It's like, all right, well, if I'm not supposed to be down here, I apologize. I'm going to leave, and I'll go back to camp. Come see me tonight. And so as I was walking back to the camp, he was paralleling me back until I got kind of close to the camp, and, then he, just went and did whatever he did. It's just been a steady progression of stuff like that. So knowing what I know now, he was absolutely communicating with me via Mindspeak, over this rattlesnake. And because of that incident, knowing that they're like the stewards of the wilderness, what right do I have to take the life of the snake? So I've given up hunting. I've been an avid hunter my whole life. I won't hunt anymore unless it's a necessity. If I can't go to the grocery store and get food, then I'm going to go out and find it myself. But, it's changed my life that drastically that, that I've even given up hunting.
Yeah, I could imagine you wanting not to, eat any meat, maybe, or have any animal killed.
No, I'm not going to give up eating meat. I'm just not going to go out and,
and kill something.
If I have the ability to go to the grocery store and buy my food, then that's what I'm going to do. But to go out and, just
kill a snake,
take the life of an animal, just, so I can add extra meat to my freezer, I'm just not going to do that anymore. So
let's go back to I know I've said it again, the shimmering, and I know it's hard for you to explain it, to explain something that you can't process in a way, but what is this shimmering? What are you seeing?
Okay, well, the first time I saw the shimmering image, it floored me. I was sitting at what I called Squatch Camp. I was sitting there. I was by myself. It was a dark night, maybe a quarter moon. You know, it was pretty dark out. And I had 4 or 5 of them surrounding me at my camp, you know, complete darkness, no campfire, no lights. We don't use any light whatsoever. Because even the crackling of a campfire will mask a lot of what they do because they're so subtle. And I was getting zapped from one that was off to my 9 o'clock, and all of a sudden I had this distinct feeling that somebody was standing right behind me. Yeah, I was like, "You're standing right behind me, aren't you?" I'm going to stand up. And I waited about a minute, and then I stood up, not to startle him. And I said, "I'm going to turn around." And the moment I turned around, there's, you know, I hate using the term cloaking, and I hate referring to the movie Predator, but it's real similar to that image that you see with the Predator. It's just this distortion. And
looking at like oil and water.
Yeah,
you can see through the water, but you see the oil floating around.
But so I turn around and I see this thing standing there, and as soon as I turned around, I was immediately paralyzed. I was frozen in my tracks. Couldn't move my arms, couldn't move my legs, and I was like, "All right, yeah, I'll sit down now." And just like that, I could move. I sat back down and went about, just sitting there and enjoying them. And just so many experiences like this. But yeah, that was the first time I saw a cloaked one. The second time that I saw it, I was at a different location. It was not completely dark out, but it was dark. Sun had set, and I saw a distortion in front of me, and I'm looking and I'm going, "Is that you?" And just like, here we go with the movie Predator again. He lit his eyes up with his, they were green, kind of like what a chem light would look like. And it's just like, holy hell. And, off he went.
What about you, Scott? How did you see the first shimmering?
We were same thing, no campfire. We're all sitting around and just listening and just taking in the experience. And we would talk from time to time, but just looking and still to this day, my brain questions, "Did you see what you saw?" But I know what my eyes saw. That the logical part of you always said, "Did I see what I saw?" kind of thing. And but it's like Kevin mentioned, Predator. It looks like that, or like I said, oil and water. You shake it up, you'll see it moving around, but you can still kind of see through. And we're all sitting around in the darkness and just looking. And I know it was dark, but there was something else it was almost like darker, but you could see like just little distortions in the darkness, and I know what I was seeing, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but I know what I was seeing, and I saw that for quite a while. It was just standing there, motionless, and it was quite an experience. This was at a different location than what Kevin was talking about. That was your third location, was the Crazy Town.
Crazy Town.
And so this was the third location that Kevin kind of started doing squatching at, and it was quite the feeling to see and the sight to see and knowing what I was seeing and not quite believing it.
It's good that you've got each other all to talk about this too, because I can imagine if you're just on your own and you're seeing this stuff, how on earth do you discuss it, or even get it off your chest or try and work it out? What happened with you, Chuck? What happened? What was the moment when things changed for you in what you believed was flesh and blood, and then obviously something different?
Well, we'd seen a number of times where I had a as Kevin mentioned, one of the first times that I went out with Kevin, I had a sighting, and it was the longest sighting that I'd had. and it lasted between 20 and 30 minutes. And there was one standing there watching our camp, and the opinion I had at the time was that he didn't realize that I could see him because the area behind him was kind of lit up. And but then I learned that they have this, we kind of argue back and forth a little bit about the term. We use the term shimmering image, and we're not real fond of the term cloaked. But basically what they do is it's a semi-solid form, and it's kind of like a distorted image. Sometimes they are the shape of the individual, but a lot of times they're just like a distorted ball. And you can kind of see it. You can see it move around, like Scott was saying. But after a while, when you've done this a little bit and you start training your eyes to look for that kind of thing, and you can see them pretty readily. And I've seen the distorted images, or the shimmering images, as we call them. I've seen them many times. The solid form that they can go to is, I've seen those 4 times. They've all been at night. And the initial one, we measured it out the next day because I know what tree it was standing next to. It was 130 feet away, and it was a little bit taller than me. I'm 6 foot tall, and it was thin, so I presume it was probably a young one, a juvenile. But some of the distorted images that I've seen, or the shimmering images, as we call them, some of them have been pretty large, and I've seen them, well, anywhere from right at the limit of what I can see in the dark, literally to having them standing right next to me. I had a very interesting experience last summer where there was there was 3 of us, and we were sitting in a group kind of facing each other, and we felt that we had individuals around us. And I looked over to my right, and there was a small, like a churning ball of energy that was probably 4 feet away from me. And I started talking to it, and it acknowledged that it was young. I asked it how old it was, and it came back and said it was 7. So it was a young one literally standing next to me. And once you experience that, once you train yourself to look for that, they do come in on you, and they'll come in fairly close once they decide that you're not a threat, and once they decide that you believe in them. And we've had that happen quite a number of times, to the point where I quit trying to keep track of them anymore.
Right. Okay. So are you can feel an energy off them as well, can you, when you said it was stood next to you?
Well, that same night when I had the one that said he was 7, he was standing initially, he was about 4 feet off to my right. And then Kevin was sitting across the way facing me, and Kevin could see him as well. And all it was like a distortion. And he moved away. And then a little bit later, either that one or a different one came back, and he was literally standing right next to me.
I'll be right back, Danielle.
And so I told him, I said, I'm going to reach my arm out. And, I don't want to scare you, but I'm going to reach my hand out. And so I took my arm, I think you can see it on the screen, from the arm of my chair, and I started gradually swinging it out into about a 45-degree angle. And I could feel the energy. When I got close to him, I could feel the energy in my hand and in my forearm. And so, I didn't want to frighten him or anything like that. So I said, okay, I'm going to move my arm back. So yes, I have felt the energy.
Wow. What about you, Scott? Have you been close to it?
I guess as far as feeling energy, they talk about being zapped and things of that nature. One of the very first experiences I had with that was I was up with Kevin. I think this was also the first experience that Kevin's talked about, the gift stump. My first experience with the gift stump, but this was a little different. We had been seeing, again, sitting in complete darkness, and deciding to get up and walk towards. We were seeing a lot of twinkle lights off in the distance, and so we decided to get up. And I have a feeling like being zapped is probably different for everybody. Everyone gets kind of different feelings, because I felt, as we walked closer, I felt an intense weight on my chest, like something was like didn't want me to go any further. It was just a huge weight on my chest. not something, you know, I didn't feel that as I was walking up, just a huge weight, like something was pushing on me. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to stop. And I have a feeling it was a zap is what I feel it was. Maybe not an intense zap, just a push to say, hey, you know, don't come any closer kind of thing. And that was my first experience with that.
So have you had any Mindspeak, Scott?
I have not, no.
You haven't, no. Oh, someone's just asked, sorry, I'm just going to go up to this because we're in this. Are you familiar with the Zendra phenomena?
With the what?
Zendra, is that how it's pronounced?
No, I'm not.
I think that's a no. So
if you can explain it, that would be I would love to hear about
some
it.
more details, please. And Kevin, you mentioned that there's some healing going on as well.
Yeah, you know, it's you know, I'm just I'm a 100% disabled veteran. I got messed up pretty bad over in Desert Storm, along with you know, some exposures to sarin nerve gas. So my neurological system doesn't work right, and you know, just a lot of physical injuries, and you know, there was one trip that I went up, and I probably shouldn't have gone because my back was in such bad shape that it was all I could do to, you know, to get my camp set up. And if I so much as stepped wrong, it was, you know, 10 plus on the pain scale. And you know, so the first night I tried sleeping on my cot, and that wasn't working so well for me. So I went in to sleep on the air mattress inside the tent. You know, I sleep on the cot outside of the tent. And I was just in so much pain that I was like, all right, guys, if, you know, I hear you have the ability to heal. If there's anything you can do to help my back, please. Otherwise, I have to go home. And I woke up the next morning like I've never had anything wrong with my back before. You know, that's just one instance. Another instance was out walking around in the forest, and I didn't have my boots on. I was just wearing my tennis shoes, and I stepped on a flat piece of sandstone, and it kind of came up and whacked against my left ankle. Well, my left ankle is held together with 2 steel plates and 9 pins and screws. So it hurt, and it was hurting bad. And there were 4 of us sitting there at the camp, Chuck included. And, you know, was asking him, I said, if you guys can do something about this pain in my ankle, I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, it was, I don't know, about 20 minutes later, I felt this little buzz in my left leg. And just like that, the pain was gone. I've definitely have heard some people talk about that, you know, they've had different things healed. I absolutely 100% do believe that they do have the ability to heal. You know, a lot of my neurological issues is close to MS. The VA won't diagnose me with MS. Of course, they won't do the final test to prove whether it's MS or not. But when everything starts going haywire, you know, I start getting these jolts, and my legs don't want to work, my arms don't want to work, and you know, I just go downhill.
Tell them what MS is. Tell them what MS.
Oh, multiple sclerosis. It's basically the on your nerves, you have a coating over them, and that coating starts to deteriorate, and basically you get short circuits going on.
The signals stop going through, don't they? Or they can get it's not a nice thing to have. So
well, the issues I've been having with that have not been near as bad over the last 2 years as what they have been for the, you know, previous 27. You know, so I strongly believe that they're doing something with that. You know, can I be dogmatic about it and say yes that they're absolutely doing that? No, I can't. But you know, that's where my suspicion is.
Yeah. And Chuck, have you felt anything like that?
I've had chronic low back pain. I'm a retired firefighter, and like many of us people in my age group, we didn't take very good care of ourselves when we were younger, and we're paying for it now. And I had lower back pain, and when I was out with Kevin in one spot, and he was having some difficulties, and he asked them if they could possibly do something to help alleviate his pain. And I almost as an afterthought, I said, I asked him, I said, and while you're at it, can you do something about my back pain? And I have no idea what happened, but I had to leave and go home the next day. And this has been well over a year now, and I have not had the back pain that I had before. So, could it be a coincidence? I suppose it could, but I don't think so.
So do you think, do we think there's a portal then or something? Or, well, is there some way that how are they coming through then?
Portals. I've only seen one thing that I would classify as a portal. I was at SQUATCH camp. It was one of my last trips up there, if not my last trip to this location, which I can't go to anymore because the Forest Service has shut that area down. But I was sitting there. It was completely dark. There was no moon out. I mean, it was like sitting in the bottom of a coal mine dark. And I had several of them around me. And this tree that was about 55, 56 yards away, about 1.5 to 2 feet off the ground, but about 6 to 8 feet high on the side of this tree. This light just went, and it was in the shape of a 2x4. That's about how the size of it, but there was no light coming out of it. There was nothing, shining light on the tree. You couldn't see any of the bark on the side of the tree. Like if light, was broadcasting out or emitting out, you would think that it would light up the side of the bark and that. And, so what it was, it was like I was looking into something, so, this is 2 years ago and I'm still dumbfounded by it. Is it a portal? How do you define a portal? What's a portal?
Yeah.
That's the closest I've come to, a portal, because I think most of the time people think portals and it's round things and, woo, 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 woo. This was just an extremely brilliant light, but no light was coming out. It was like I was looking in.
Yeah. So do you think these, I'll call them energies, because it seems like this shimmering thing is an energy, or, because we all are, I guess. But do you think they can take other forms and not just Bigfoot?
I don't know. There's plenty of Native American oral tradition that makes that a possibility. I'm not going to say that they don't. I've had a couple of encounters with, some animals up there that's made me question, a Mexican gray wolf that I was probably 30 feet away from, and I had my min pin in my arms, and I had her looking the other way, but I squatted down and I'm talking to this wolf, and he cocks his head sideways, ears perk up, he's wagging his tail, just like, my buddy's dog come up to see me is what it was like. It was just odd characteristics for a wolf. I'll put it at that. Was it something that shapeshifted to look like a wolf? I don't know. Was it something they were doing to make me think I was looking at a wolf? I don't know. I don't have answers for a lot of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, just thoughts. I don't expect everyone, anyone to know, you'd be a rich man if you knew the answers. We all would be. What do you think, Chuck, that they can take different forms? What's your opinion?
I think that they are capable of projecting thoughts into your head to where they might make you think you're seeing something, whether it's a physical, flesh and blood thing that you're seeing or not, or it's just a thought they put in your head. They can put all kinds of things in your head. They can make you go to sleep. They can make you afraid. They can
make you dance.
Yeah, they can make you euphoric. They can make you feel like you have to leave. They can also project a kind of an overwhelming sense of contentment and love and that kind of thing. My own personal experiences, you hear a lot of people talk about how there's some kind of a big hairy monster and they scare everybody. And I can tell you that I have never felt fear from them. I have felt curiosity. I have felt frustration. I have felt excitement. And I've felt, I guess, acceptance maybe. But I've never felt the fear. When you do this for a while and you start opening your mind to the possibilities of what you can tell when they're around. And Scott mentioned about he felt the pressure in his chest. The zapping to me and to Kevin, actually, we feel it the same way. And to us, it's like an electrical feeling in your forehead. And when we're sitting out and they come around, that's the first thing I notice before I hear anything or see anything is I can feel this sense. We call it a tingle, getting a tingle. And as soon as we start feeling that, we start talking to them. And a lot of times, Kevin's better at receiving the Mindspeak than I am. I have experienced it, but Kevin seems like he can experience it better. And we've kind of developed, when he and I are out, we've developed a thing where I ask questions and he sits there and puts his mind in neutral to see if he can pick up an answer. And we've been extremely successful on certain nights. Some nights they're chatty, some nights they're not. But we've had a very, very high degree of success in doing that. It's kind of interesting. You have to be careful how you ask a question. They very seldom come out with a negative answer. And so a lot of times if you ask them a question where the answer that you're expecting is no, you just don't get an answer. If the answer you're expecting is yes, then you'll get that. We're still learning about what we can ask and what we can't. Last summer, we had a night where we asked, the first thing we usually ask them is how many of you are here with us? And last summer they came back and I believe the number was 7 because they were almost in a group. And I asked if there were elders with them, and they said there were. And then we were asking them questions about, and one of the questions we asked them, you asked earlier about healing, and we asked them about healing. We said, do you have healers? And they came back and said, all can heal. We also asked about how come some people can understand them when they speak to them, meaning the Mindspeak, and some people can't. And what they came back and they told us was that we talk to everyone, not everyone can hear. Now, we also believe that a lot of times the ones that come around you are the younger ones. Once they realize that you are not a threat to them, the younger ones, I believe the young ones are probably fascinated with us, and the young ones will come around us, and the young ones will only speak, or when they give you answers, they're usually very brief, 1 or 2 words. And so we'll ask them, how many of you are here? And they'll tell us. And it's like that little one I asked, how old are you? It was 7. There's certain things they'll tell you, and a lot of things they won't. And the elders apparently they have more freedom to be able to contact us and talk to us when they want to. But we've heard verbal communication from them as well, but the verbal communication is not near as clear as when they talk to you in Mindspeak. In the Mindspeak, it's like they put that thought, like Kevin mentions, he says it's like a thought, all of a sudden it's a thought, not your own. And some of what I've experienced, it sounds like it's all of a sudden it sounds like my voice talking to me, and I've had that experience as well. I've asked them on numerous occasions if there was something they could do to help me to understand them, because there are times when I'll feel that they're trying to communicate with me, but I can't understand what they're trying to tell me. And it's like garbling or something. It's not like they're trying to talk to me in a foreign language. It's just that they're trying to talk to me, and I just can't quite make out what they're trying to tell me. And then I've also had them tell me in very, very clear terms. I've been able to hear what they're trying to tell me. We ask them their names. We know like 8 of them by name, that they've actually told us their name. The elder that watches over Kevin, his name is Eadengan. And Kevin refers to him as Indy because initially when he first met him, he had trouble with the name, so he started calling him Indy. And for some reason or other, he doesn't seem to mind that. But I've had a number of them. I had one that was I have a hearing issue. I've got tinnitus real bad, which is the ringing in your ears. And I've asked them if there's something they could do to help me with that. And they've worked on me 3 times that I know of. And twice during the period of time when they were doing that, I asked them, the individual who was doing that, I asked them what their name was, and they told me. And the one was a female named Malarica, and another one was a male named Deming. And ask them, if you catch them just right and you ask them their name, they'll tell you. But I think you have to, number one, you have to have an open mind about whether all this is even possible. And number 2, you just have to understand that number one, they don't have to follow our rules of physics, and they do what they're going to do. And if you're there with an open mind and you ask them the right questions and you're respectful to them, they will respond to you. They will talk to you.
Yeah. And Daniela, one thing I should mention, for the listeners that are out there, that for me, this isn't just a passive thing that once in a while I go out and do. Since 2017, August of 2017, I've put just short of 5,000 hours out in the field. And I think that alone has a lot to do with it, with the amount of interactions that we're experiencing. Chuck, he's probably got about a third of that time out with me, maybe. But I spend a vast amount of time out there.
And I have 1/64th of that time.
Yeah, so,
Can you?
Well, what I wanted to say is I'm not out, out there being an intruder. I'm not setting cameras up, trap cameras, and trying to catch them on therm and video and all that stuff. I've moved so far beyond that. I'm trying to develop trust with them, trying to develop a type of a relationship with them, and I've just gone so far beyond trying to prove that they exist, and I just accept that they exist. And I think, being that I'm not running around the forest acting like the paparazzi, has a whole lot to do with the amount of interactions that I actually have with them.
I think that has a lot to do with it. I think that you have to, number one, once you acknowledge, or once you get beyond it in your head and you know that they're there and you know they exist, you need to treat them with respect. And not try to trick them. We sit right there and we tell them, we promise you, we will not try to trick you. We will not shine lights. We will not use cameras. No lights, no cameras, no guns. We want you to trust us. We want to develop a relationship, and we want to learn about you. And I think that goes a long ways. And I think most anybody that takes that methodology, I think they will probably have the same type of success that we have.
Yeah, I mean, and it's going back to what Kevin's saying. It's become a personal journey, hasn't it? It's not about getting out there or whatever. This is something that you're experiencing.
Well, when you experience something so powerful that I mean, I can't. I don't even know how to put it into words other than, it's life altering. The amount of love that they have, that they show, in exchanging gifts with them, and and little things that they'll do around the camp. Like one day they lined up, I think it was 6 pine cones. I mean, they were all pointing the same direction. I mean, could they have fallen out of the tree and landed that way? Probably not. It's just the little subtle things that they like to do. But the gift exchanging, has been a pretty wild ride. But getting back to what you were asking about, the life changing and this journey that I've been on. If I wasn't experiencing this stuff, I wouldn't be spending the time out in the middle of nowhere completely alone that I'm doing. I've got a beautiful wife that's, at home, and all my kids and grandkids are around here. And, there's a lot of other things that I could be doing, but
hanging out with your awesome neighbor.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Pretty far away from you.
But it's something that grabbed a hold of me, and it's beautiful is what it is. A lot of PTSD issues I have, and being in a large metropolitan area like Phoenix, and and just the noise, getting out in the wilderness, definitely helps that. But then you throw this into the mix of it, and it's just like, wow, just about everybody in my family has had experiences. Back in July, my 14-year-old grandson had his first sighting, which was pretty cool. He wasn't expecting that, but
well, before we go there, first I want to ask, for some people who are religious, maybe might consider this kind of stuff like demons and things like that. How do you kind of respond to that?
Okay, well, I'm a very spiritual person. I wouldn't go as far as saying religious, because I don't, I'm not into organized religion. But I am a born again Christian. And I'm very strong in my faith, and because of this, at the very beginning, and here in the Melba Ketchum DNA studies and all that, I was like, oh, they have to be Nephilim. They have to be the Nephilim. Yeah, and I was pretty rock solid on that for a little while, and until I started experiencing, this high level of love, and it's kind of stepped me away from that. They're Nephilim, who and what they are, is I'm not ready to to come out publicly and say that they're this or they're that, because I just don't know. I can tell you what they call themselves. They call themselves the people. But as far as demons, and it's real easy for for people who have a religious background to immediately go to that, because it's something they don't truly understand. And it'd be pretty easy for somebody to say that, that they have to be demonic, and I just don't think that's the case.
You're not doing that.
Project something there, yeah. I think what's going on is, one thing, they have a sense of humor, and they like to mess around with you a little bit. And I think a lot of the things that scare people, I think a lot of it can be attributed to the maybe the rowdy teenager types of the forest people, and I think that they'll mess with people in a camp just to see what happens. And if they scare them and they go home, then then it's all well and good. But I don't think, in my own experiences, if they try to intimidate you and they find out really quickly that they can't intimidate you, then they immediately back down. And I've been screamed at. I've heard the howls. And basically when that kind of stuff happens, or if they, break a stick right near you or something along that line. And the first thing I do is I just start talking to them. The very first time that I got zapped, Kevin was there, and I thought my head was going to explode. Literally, it was so intense and so powerful. It felt like my brain was boiling. And so I didn't want to show fear. And so I just asked them, I said, it's getting very uncomfortable. Would you please stop doing that to me? And they turned it down immediately. And so I think that there's some of that, the area that I live in and the area where our research locations are at, Kevin's house is down here in the desert in the Metro Phoenix area. In case people haven't noticed, we're sitting in his garage right now. That's the garage door behind us. And, but the area up there where I live is up in the higher mountain area. And it's a very heavily used recreation area for the people out of the Metro Phoenix area. There's 3.5 million people in Metro Phoenix. And some weekends, it seems like they all want to come up to our area and camp. And some of them aren't very good stewards of the land, and they leave litter and all this kind of stuff. And so I think that sometimes the forest people are probably not real happy about that. And so I think there are times when they'll test people to see, what they're made out of, test their metal. Yeah. And, I don't think they'll hurt them, but they will sometimes scare people. Sometimes they'll come up and they'll scare lone hikers, for example. And
yeah.
But and I've investigated a number of things where there's been people have had things happen that they literally can't explain. And I think a lot of times they're just kind of messing with you. And once they understand that that they're there, it's kind of like they shift gears a bit. And they'll kind of, we call it that when they come around, we say that we're getting a tingle, and it's like a little electrical feeling in my forehead, is the way that I perceive it. And that's kind of like a thing saying, hi, we're here. And once we start talking to them, they more often than not, they'll respond. And I've been in a number of different locations in Arizona, both in the mountains and in the desert, where I've gotten that little tingle. And that's the only time I ever get it, is when they're around. And I've literally got it in my own living room a couple of times where they've actually been at my house. Right. And I live in a town that's pretty close to the mountains, but I don't think you need to do that. I have a travel trailer. I have a van that I travel with that I use for when I go out camping looking for the forest people. I have a van, but I also have a travel trailer when my wife goes along. And I've literally been places and had them communicate with me in my travel trailer. And it's the same kind of feeling every single time. And I think that some people probably perceive that as a threat sometimes, but once you get beyond that, then all of a sudden it's not scary anymore. All of a sudden it's like, oh, hi, you're here. Right.
Well, look, before we go into any more detail about stuff, I'm going to go through some of the questions that have come up before I leave them on the screen. And this is something I think I asked you last time from Squatch Lady PA. So if they can actually cloak and you can see the shimmer image, why would they ever, I think you're trying to say, why did they show themselves to people if they can stay in that shimmer state?
I think that they can. I think that they can. Number one, they don't have to follow the laws of physics that we follow, and I think they can do a lot of things. I think they can be totally invisible, and I think they'll frequently come right up to people's camps, and that then they can also reveal themselves as what we call the twinkle lights, which is a little orb, and they look like little LEDs. They can show themselves as what we call the shimmering image or the distorted image. And last but not least, they can go full solid form. And
from shimmer to full solid form.
Yeah. Well, the most simplified answer I can give to that is they do what they do when they do it. That's the most simplified answer. Why they do what they do, I don't have the slightest idea.
We're still trying to learn that. We're still trying to learn about them. I've had 4 solid sightings of solid form ones. They've all been at night, and I've yet to see one in daylight conditions. I would dearly like to, and I hope at some time I will. But there's been times when we have them around us, and we're actually able to tell, where they're at just by the way we can feel in our heads without being able to see anything. And when we start talking to them, they will respond to us. And does it sound crazy? Yeah, I'll be the first one to say it sounds crazy. But I'll also say that once you see something, you can't unsee it. And once you experience something, you can't unexperience it. You can second guess yourself till the cows come home. But when the dust settles, you realize that, yeah, there was something there, and that did happen. And when one of them talks to you in your head out of the blue, it's quite a mind. It'll change your perception of what's going on.
Yeah, I can imagine. Fishing, gaming, and guitars. Could these possibly be spirits projecting themselves as Bigfoot because that's your interest?
That's a good question. And my answer to that is, yeah, it could be, but I doubt it. Because when you start talking about spirits, now you're getting into quantum mechanics, and the quantum world and dimensions, and what are spirits? They're an energy form that's in a different dimension than what we are, and sometimes they can manifest into our dimension and sometimes not. I absolutely firmly believe that that they're more of an energy-based being. And the reason that we have the ability to see them is based on vibrational frequencies and the visible light that our eyes can see, and how our rods and cones in our eyes work. That somehow they can slow down or speed up their vibrational frequency, which allows light to reflect or not reflect or be absorbed, I guess would be the right way to say it. To where the spectrum of light that we can, that us as humans can actually see, that's how it manifests, So are they spirits? I don't think they're spirits in the sense that what we think about a spirit as, but it's definitely something that, it's caused me to dive deep into quantum mechanics and quantum entanglements and stuff like that. And it literally makes my brain hurt. And I don't understand the mathematics behind it. It's way above my pay scale, but I understand the theory and the concept behind it. And, if somebody out there hasn't read Ron Moorhead's book, The Quantum Bigfoot, I highly suggest it. Very well put together.
Yeah.
I was at a different location, and I was by myself in a desert location, and I got approached, and they were attempting to contact me, and I was having difficulty understanding what they were trying to tell me. And I asked them point blank. I said, "Are you spirits of long dead Native people?" And the way they respond to that, in my experience, a lot of times, if the answer to a question is yes, they'll say yes, but they almost never say no. And the way when they give you a negative answer, it's they shut you off for a short period of time, then they come back. And that's what they did when I asked them if they were spirits of long dead Native people. They just absolutely just shut me off for about 5 minutes. And so, do I think they're a different type of entity? Yeah, I do think they are. I think they are. There's people in the Pacific Northwest using the same research model that we use, and we're getting a lot of the same results that they're getting. And basically, the result there is that they're an energy-based form. They're not a carbon-based life form like we are, and they have the ability to do a lot of things that we can't do, and some things that we tend to think is impossible, but they do it routinely.
Are they offering any information, or do you have to ask for it?
No, sometimes the strangest things happen. There was, yeah, I'll just come out and say it because it sounds nutty as hell. But I just recently, this past summer, was up at our location. Chuck was up there, and there was we had another gentleman with us that was his first trip out. So Chuck and him were talking, and I went off to go check the gift stump. And over by my gift stump, there's a lot of structures, and I kind of got directed to go into the structures, and I got in there, and there's this big teepee, and I put my hand on the teepee, and all of a sudden I got the most insane experience I've ever had. It was something to the effect of, when the energy form dies, and I still can't quite grasp what they were saying, but it was like the energy form, they put it in that branch, and then the rest of the family, they'll stack branches around. So kind of like if you think about a headstone or a cemetery or something like that, it's a place of remembrance. And I got hit with this emotion. It's like I could feel all of their remorse for the loved one that they had lost, that this was a memorial for. And I asked, well, am I not supposed to be in here? And they say, yes, it's okay. Show respect. But when I got hit with this, feeling all of these forest beings' emotions at me at once, it damn near dropped me to the ground. I physically burst out into tears. And I didn't go out there asking them this. I didn't go out there expecting this experience, and it really overwhelmed me. And about 90 yards back to the camp, and it seemed like it took me about 2 hours to get back because I was just so overwhelmed with this emotion. And I got back, and Chuck and Rob were still talking, and I just kind of sat there and waited for a lull. And I was like, Chuck, you're not going to believe this. And so they will if they feel you need to know something, they're going to let you know. A lot of times, though, it's questions that I or Chuck or somebody else asks that are out there that will get the answers. And sometimes the answers come in ways that, that you're not going to expect, being, I'm here in the desert, and it's hot, it gets hot here, believe it or not. One of the best trackways I found is about 8 miles north of my house at a place called the Salt River. It's a big recreation area where everybody goes tubing. And I found, some sign of them out there, and I found this trackway that there's no way it was anything else other than, Bigfoot, a straight line distance between the steps. And, so I started asking the question of, how can you, you're so hairy, and, how can you be in the desert, and, the Yetis and the, in the Himalayas and Russia, they're just all over the place in the swamps and jungles. How do you deal with these temperatures? How does it affect you? And it was pretty funny. It was the three of us. We were up at a place called Crazy Town, and it was pretty cold out. It was getting close to the freezing mark, and hand warmers in the pockets, and I got face wrap on, and full bibs, and it was pretty cold. And all of a sudden, I couldn't feel the heat from the hand warmers in my pockets, and I felt this wave go from the top of my head down to the bottom of my feet. And I was like, Chuck, I said, I can't feel any temperature. He goes, what do you mean? I said, it's like I've gone temperature neutral. I can't feel cold. Like, you know, I could feel the texture of the hand warmers, but I couldn't feel any temperature. And, you know, and I was pretty amazed by that. And Chuck goes, hey, can you guys do that to me?
And they did. We were dressed, you know, it was pretty cold out, and we were dressed in pretty heavy clothing. And when Kevin told me that he was, and we referred to it as being temperature neutral, you couldn't feel cold, you couldn't feel heat. And it started all of a sudden I realized my face wasn't cold anymore. And it just went right down my body and did the same thing to me. And interestingly enough, Scott was there too. And the way they addressed it with Scott is they put him to sleep. He fell asleep. And he slept through the whole thing.
Yeah, because what's funny is I wasn't even tired. You know, Chuck was talking about earlier about, how did you put it?
They can make you sleepy.
Yeah, the different emotions and things like that. Well, they could definitely make you tired. I wasn't tired. I had no intention of going to sleep. It was like that. I was just tired. I wasn't tired before, and I wanted to sit up, but I got tired. I was like, I got to go to bed. I'm so tired.
I've had them before. I realized that they could do that. I had them do that to me a couple of times at a couple of different locations, and then finally we realized that if they did that to you and you recognize it, if you ask them to stop, they'll stop. If if you're making me tired, will you please stop doing that? And they will.
Well, and tell them what happened.
Which time?
My dance.
Huh?
My dance.
Oh yeah, they here at the same place. We nicknamed the place Crazy Town because there's been so many crazy things that have happened there, and of course, like a lot of people, we have nicknames for the various places that we go. But Kevin and I were at Crazy Town, and all of a sudden, Kevin says, "I'm pinned to my chair. I can't move." And that's when they give you what we call a power zap. That's what they do. You're paralyzed basically. And this lasted about, I don't know, maybe not very long, maybe 2 or 3, 4 minutes maybe. And then all of a sudden, when they released him, he got very euphoric. And the next thing I know, he's up singing and dancing. Now, if you know Kevin, you know that he doesn't sing and dance much.
No.
He's not a singing, dancing kind of guy. But he was up and he was dancing around, and it was just the strangest thing. But that was kind of their way of messing with him, pulling a prank on him.
Yep.
And it was quite funny. We got a good laugh out of that, and it lasted for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so, and then he was back being old Kevin again. But I think that they do that. I think they do stuff like that to you. Number one, if you show respect to them and they trust you and they believe in you, that you're not a threat to them, I think they'll play jokes on you. I think I've had them lay hands on me. I've had them physically touch me. There's nothing there. Last summer we were at a place where all of a sudden I felt, we were bundled up because it was cold, and I felt what felt to me like 2 fingers on the side of my neck. And as soon as I told Kevin, I said, I think I just got touched on the neck. And as soon as I told him that, they did the same thing to him. Mm-hmm. And we could turn around and look. We actually had a fire that night. And the reason why we had the fire that night is because in the middle of the afternoon, Kevin got a message that fire's okay. And so we weren't planning on having a fire, but after about the 3rd time they told him that it was okay to have a fire, we decided, okay, they want us to have a fire. So we had a fire. And so we could see. And when Kevin said he was getting touched on the neck, I could turn around, I could see very well. And there was absolutely nothing visible there. But we felt like we were getting touched.
Wow.
And we had another person with us that kind of experienced the same thing. I've experienced it as well in other instances in different locations.
If they weren't having these interactions with you or with people this way, what do you think the purpose is? Do you think it is to interact?
I think part of it is to show attention to you, and I think also, I think that the young ones, the very young ones, I think they have a real fascination with us. Remember, they don't have internet, they don't have movies and TV and all that kind of stuff. So we're kind of their entertainment, I think. And I think the young ones are learning about us. And so I think they'll come around and they'll throw a rock at you or something like that. Or if you're in a tent, they'll throw pebbles against the side of your tent because it makes a funny sound. They'll come up and walk around you if you're in a tent where you can't, where you can't see them. They'll come up. The last night we were out, which was last fall, when it started getting cold up at the Crazy Town, we found out that the young ones up there, we believe it's the young ones, they kind of have a fascination for these little white powdered sugar donuts. And so we put donuts out for them, and they come and take them. Now, how do we know it's them taking them? Well, if you know what powdered sugar donuts are, they're messy. And if you had a squirrel or a raccoon or some other kind of critter come up and take your powdered sugar donut, it's going to leave a mess. When the forest people come and take them, they're just gone. There's no mess. And and we had them do it. I mean, we had them take them when we were sitting, less than 100 feet away. But the last night that we were up there, this last season, it's too cold to go up there now. It's at about 5,400 foot elevation, and it's pretty chilly up there at night. But the last time we were up there, we got the sound up on the hillside where it sounded for all the world like little kids trying to sound like a wildcat. They're going, meow, meow, meow. So I asked out loud, I said, is that you guys doing that? Or is that something we should be afraid of? And they came back and said, no fear. They gave the message to Kevin, no fear. And so later on that night, after we went to bed, I left powdered sugar donuts outside my van. And no sooner that I laid down, because I sleep in a van, Kevin sleeps in a tent, but I have a conversion van that I built out an interior for myself. And that's what I sleep in. And I was in there, and I hear this right next to the van. I hear this, wow, wow, wow. So I told him, I said, the donuts are for you. Go ahead and take them. I promise I won't get up and try to look at you. I won't try to see you. And sure enough, the donuts were gone. And they
like blackberry pie too.
Yeah, we up at another place that we go, they tend to like pie. But down there at Crazy Town, the area place we call Crazy Town, they seem to like the little white powdered sugar donuts, and we'll leave them out. We'll leave like 3 of them out, and in the dark we'll be sitting, like I say, less than 100 feet away, and they'll come and get them.
They took the pie off the table.
Yeah, they took a pie right off the table there. Yeah.
And the last time Kevin and I went to Crazy Town, same thing. Pie in a container. The container was open. It's like they scooped it up in their hands. You could see the plops of the blackberry as they walked away with it. What else does that in the woods? What else can hold pie? Their hands full of pie and it plopped down and kind of create a trail. That night, a skunk ended up started eating came in and started eating the blackberry blackberry off of the ground. But then that next morning, there it was, that trail of plops from the blackberry pie.
You hear a lot of stories about them that they like apples, but interestingly enough, in the area where Crazy Town is at, there's an old ranch up there that's a 100-year-old ranch where they have an old apple orchard. And every animal up there has eaten apples off of that apple orchard, and then they've roamed around the hills over there, and through their when they poop, basically they've dropped apple seeds, and there's apple trees all over the place up there. And interestingly enough, the forest people up there, they don't care much for apples. They get all the apples they want, and they tend to like sweets. But up on the other place we go in the middle of the summer, which is at 7,600 foot elevation, they don't have that up there, and they like apples. And in fact, at one point, Kevin asked them, what would you like me to bring? And they told him apple pie. So we brought him apple pie, and they took it.
And left me a feather.
Yeah, and left him a feather.
I was going to ask you, did they ever leave you anything?
Oh yeah, all the time.
This little stone right there. That's Kevin's little stone.
I'm gonna put this up here. Where am I at? This rock right here. People say, "Oh, big deal, it's a rock." Well, this type of rock geologically does not exist up where I'm at. And the first time that I had left them gifts, it was a box of powdered donuts, a plastic container. It's got the push tabs on it. And I opened one tab, but left the other one closed. And my gift stub was right about 4.5, 5 feet up in the air. And I lag bolted a wooden tray on it. And so they took the donuts, and the next morning, this rock was sitting on my front bumper.
Wow.
Now that rock didn't jump off the ground and land on his front bumper. There's no way it did that.
And it geologically doesn't exist up there.
Yeah, we've all had them leave little sticks and stuff like that, and just little things to say, hi, we're here. And so we've left them food. We've also left them things like little shiny things like marbles and things like that. And they tend to kind of like that kind of stuff.
Fidget spinners.
Yeah, fidget spinner. Remember when they were the rage, all the kids had to have one. Well, I took a fidget spinner up there and I sat out there in the dark and I spun it and I said, this is, our young ones like these things. I'm going to leave it on the table when I go to bed. And if you want to come in and play with it, that's fine. Well, the next morning I looked out there and it had been moved. And another time I did the same thing, and they grabbed the fidget spinner, and apparently with one of the, they're like a triangle and had the little thing sticking through the fingers or something. And they went on the plastic table and they were going back and forth on the plastic table. And I've still got the marks on the table where they did that.
Right.
That didn't happen by itself. They absolutely had to have come in and done that because they didn't quite understand how the fidget spinner works. So they grabbed it and they scraped it on the table.
Let me go through some more questions. Have you ever asked them how old they can live till? Or how,
Yes, I have asked them, and I've not really gotten anything, dogmatic or kind of under the assumption that they probably live about 3 times what our lifespan is.
Yeah, the group out of the Pacific Northwest that's using our same research methods have asked them that question. They were told that their lifespan is approximately 3 times ours. So that would indicate that, that one that's the equivalent of our 60-year-old is 180 years old. The interesting thing about that, if it's true, and we don't have any reason to believe that it is or is not true, what that would mean is that the elders that are alive today were living in our part of Arizona before the Anglo-Europeans came, which would mean that they've witnessed all of us building towns and roads and cutting down the trees and all the terrible things that we've done to the land and all the good things we've done as well. But they've done that during their lifespan. Yeah. And if you look at it that way, that's pretty interesting. They've seen a lot of history.
Yeah. It's no wonder that they come back into urban areas, because that's kind of been part of their territory maybe at one point. Did you ask them who the dogmen are?
Nope, never have. Simple.
When you hear from them, do you mean mentally or physically? You hearing a voice?
Sometimes I feel a physical connection, but it's thoughts enter your head that absolutely are not your own. It's what is the one I'm looking for?
I can tell you that in my thing is for example, I've been asking them for a teacher because I want to learn about them. And I asked them quite a number of times on several different outings. I asked them if they could provide me with a teacher. And I was home sitting in my recliner chair at home one evening, and all of a sudden, out of the plain clear blue, in my head, just as plain as day, I got, "I am Kem Yang, I will be your teacher." Now, I don't know where that came from. It had to come from external. I didn't invent that, but it was there.
Yeah. I'll tell you about the fire incident. It was last April. We were getting ready to do our family outing, and I went up about 4 days before any of my family was going to be coming up. And I'd gone out for a walk, and I kind of got directed to go somewhere else other than where I was wanting to go. And I got into this other campsite that we call Broken Mirror, and there was a bunch of cut firewood there that elk hunters from, before the winter set in, because the area gets closed down during the winter. And I was the first person back in there because I had to cross a couple of snowdrifts to get back in there. But there's a bunch of stacked firewood. So I was like, oh, cool. And I immediately got in my head, you need a fire. I'm like, I don't want a fire. And so I walked back and I got my truck and drove the trucks back up there and started loading the firewood and you need a fire. I don't want a fire. I like sitting in the dark. And so now I'm unloading the firewood at the camp, and I get it again. You really need to have a fire tonight. I don't want a fire. I'm being pig-headed. And, so this goes on and on throughout the day. I keep getting this, you need a fire. And I'm like, I don't want a fire. And this was actually the same day I saw the white one. It was either a white Bigfoot step behind a tree or there was a polar bear. That's the only two options.
And we don't have any polar bears in Arizona.
Yeah. And shortly after I saw that one, I got, you really need to have a fire tonight. I'm like, I don't want a fire tonight, but I got the fire pit set up because I didn't know that particular night. That was a Thursday night, and I didn't know if my son was going to come up Thursday night or Friday morning with his family. And so I had the fire pit ready to go. And I was sitting there, and back behind me, I hear some coyotes. I'm not worried about coyotes. I spent enough time in the outdoors. I'm not worried about them one iota. And this pack of coyotes kept getting closer and closer. And then they're off over this direction, another pack of coyotes. And then off this direction, another pack of coyotes. And they were starting to come in. And I started to get a little unnerved. And, so I got a couple of knives out of my truck because I don't carry any firearms up there. And I was sitting there kind of laughing to myself that my son's going to pull up and I'm going to be covered in blood and I'm going to have dog pelts stacked up. But it got to the point to where it was like, all right, I get it. I need a fire. And so I put a, quarter gallon of gasoline on the fire and got a stick and threw it, lit it and threw it in. And when that big ball of fire went up, I saw no less than 30 dogs. And, they were coming in to get me.
Wow.
And, it's never had any experience like that before with coyotes. And, people ask me, do you think they were looking out for you? And well, I know they are. I've been told that I'm protected when I'm up there. Yeah. Just another example of that. I was going to go up and do just an overnighter. And I got up to SQUATCH camp and I didn't unload my truck yet. I walked out to my gift stump and I immediately got need to leave, not safe. I was like, what do you mean? Is there something up here I need to worry about? Need to leave, not safe. And I was like, all right. And so I got on my truck and turned around and drove the 2.5 hours back home. And my wife's like, what are you doing? I was told to leave, not safe. And that night, my blood pressure, it skyrocketed. What would have happened with my blood pressure shooting that high up at 7,600 foot altitude, yeah. I don't know. But, people could say that's coincidence. But when you constantly have these coincidences happening, it's no longer a coincidence.
Yeah. You've been doing this a long time as well. This isn't just something you're experiencing. This is there's a lot of history to what you're going through, isn't there? I'm just going to whiz through because there's loads of questions here, and I'm just going to get them up because they were asked ages ago. Hello, Carl. Do any of these men play musical instruments or draw or paint? Me and Carl, we often talk about Bigfoot. We kind of think maybe they're drawn to creative people. Do you think there's any that?
I played violin for about 8 years when I was a kid. But no, I'm not a musician. I do write a lot of poetry.
Yeah, I think where the question might be going there, and one of the things that we do is that in the evening, just before dark, we do play a collection of Native American flute music. And there's been times that we've gotten a positive reaction from them that they like that. And so we don't necessarily play the instrument, but we do play the recording.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been doing that from the get-go. You know, it's there's about nine songs that I have downloaded, and I play them every night about right about 45 minutes before the sun goes down. I'll play it and let it play and let it play and let it play. Once it gets dark, you know, then I shut it off and turn the audio recorder on.
Right. You kind of answered this before about, do you think the structures could be memorials? You say
the teepee structures, yes.
Yeah. What do you think about the glyphs that are left? The A signs and the stuff like that? Do you think they'll leave?
Yeah, I think the glyphs definitely mean something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have not been able to, and we're probably not smart enough to try to figure out what they mean or to break the code, if you will. But I do think that the ground glyphs definitely mean something. We found them quite a number of different locations and found them around our camp, and maybe someday we'll know that. But right now we don't know what they mean, but we do believe they mean something.
This is a great question, Rachel. Do they ever ask you anything?
You know, one night up there when they were particularly chatty, interestingly enough, I asked them that question. I said, is there any question that you would like to ask us? And here again, I was asking the questions and Kevin was listening for the answers. And all of a sudden he had a bunch of them trying to talk to him all at the same time. And to the point where he couldn't, what would you say, 5 or 6 of them probably?
Oh, man, it seemed like 10 or 11 of them.
Yeah, they're all trying to talk to him at the same time. So he said, one at a time, please. And then I said the same thing. You know, he can't understand all of you at the same time. Can one of you, can you ask questions one at a time? And then we got the distinct impression that the elder that was there just kind of shut the whole thing off. That this is done, and that was it. But yeah, we have asked them that. I think they probably know a whole lot more about us than we know about them. Because they have ample opportunity to look at us and watch us, and both the good and the bad. The area, as I mentioned, the area that we go to is a high mountain area. It's a recreation area for Metro Phoenix, and a lot of the people that go up there are people from the city, and they go up there and they play loud music and they drink a lot of beer and they do things that aren't probably very smart and don't put our species in a very good light. But yeah, we have asked them that at times. We've asked them if, is there any questions that you have that we can try to answer for you? My guess is they probably know the answers to that already.
Yeah, and kind of how I'll respond to that is I'm under the hypothesis right now, which is very expensive word for a guess, that some of these zaps that they do, because there's different types of zaps that I get, and it's like one of them is like they're doing a download, and it's like they immediately know everything about you.
Yeah, they definitely understand intent. And that's one of the reasons why we believe that one of the reasons why hunters don't have a lot of experiences with them is because they know that hunters are up there, and they're bringing weapons and they're up there to kill something, and they can tell that. And so they leave them alone. when we're up there, we go to great lengths to make sure we don't look like hunters. We don't wear camouflage and we don't act like hunters. I used to, when I first started out, I was up there trying to, whack on trees and trying to learn all that kind of stuff. And I had a moderate degree of success at that. And I had I had the night vision and I had the cameras and all this kind of stuff. And what I found out is that kind of repels them. They don't like that. And when we put all that stuff away and we tell them, we're not going to use cameras, we're not going to try to trick you, that's when they start trusting you and they start interacting with you. And I can tell you from my standpoint, it was like night and day. When I put the cameras away and left the gun in the car, that kind of thing, it was just like a whole different world than when I first started out.
Yeah. Scott, what do you think? You've been quiet for a bit. Think about it. Talk to you. You told me you were doing you've done ghost investigations, paranormal investigations in the past, and you've been kind of into that. Do you think this Bigfoot sits under the paranormal umbrella?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, definitely paranormal umbrella. Just like with the way they can shimmering image cloak, we'll call it cloaking. The way that they can the twinkle lights and the way they can travel from one area to another, and I definitely would say paranormal. Just like I feel just like the UFOs, I think definitely fall under paranormal. Anything that's paranormal by the definition of the word, right?
Yeah.
And that's my thought behind it. Is definitely paranormal. I like to think one day it'll be normal and I'll have an answer to it, or Kevin will have an answer to it, and it could be explained. But for now, definitely fall under the paranormal.
So, did you see any orbs out there?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Big one. What?
The first orb I saw was in October of 2017. I was waiting on Chuck and several other investigators to come up, and I was up there probably 3 days before they got up there, and I was sitting there and looked up in this tree, and I was like, I was thinking it was brake light shining on this tree, some brake lights from somebody's vehicle. And it dawned on me, well, it can't be brake lights. There's nobody out here. I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and there's nobody within about, probably 6-7 miles of me. And so I'm looking at this red glow in the tree, and all of a sudden come around, and I'm staring at this big red ball. And I'm like, what the is that? And I'll tell you the first thing that went through my mind, I don't know if any of the listeners out there know who Travis Walton is, but he's a gentleman that got abducted by aliens here in Arizona back in the mid-late 70s.
They made a movie out of it called Fire in the Sky.
And where he was abducted, about 15 miles as a crow flies? 10
or 15 miles as a crow flies from our research area.
So that was the first thing that went through my head, because once again, this back in 2017, and and I'm all these experiences are building, and I'm like, what in the hell is that? I'm watching this ball, this drift around up in through the trees, and then it just disappeared, and then on the ground and in front of me, probably about 30, 40 yards away, I'm seeing all these little twinkle lights. I'm like, well, what the hell is that? And then they would disappear, and a little bit later, this orb is up over here in the trees. And I'm like, what the nuts? And it would disappear, and then all these twinkle lights would be back, and I'm getting branch breaks and clacks, and yeah, so the orbs are real.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I'm a very analytical guy. Yeah, when I first met Chuck, and he was, asked me what I knew about Bigfoot, and I said, well, I know they're real. So he started filling me in on, all the different aspects in the Bigfoot world, and And then he started talking about the woo, and I was just like, man, what a bunch of crackpots. And he's like, well, if you're gonna seriously get into this, just keep an open mind. And I was like, all right, and so I did.
And here you are.
Yeah, here I am today. You know that. The biggest problem that I think a lot of people have with accepting this is they get stuck in a paradigm that, that scientifically that this is not possible, and I'm here to tell you, we don't know half of what we think we might know, and anybody who's going to be out doing what I'm doing, what Chuck and I are doing, and you want to go out there and experience this. The biggest thing I can tell you is, don't let your paradigm dictate what your experiences are going to be. Let your experiences dictate your paradigm.
Another way to say that is if you go in there with the belief that Bigfoot doesn't exist and you have an experience, it's going to be something else. It's not going to be Bigfoot that did it. But if you go in there with an open mind and you let what you experience dictate what you believe, eventually, I tend to refer to it as like bricks in a wall. If you go out there and you find a little piece of stone that's about yay wide, about yay tall, and about yay long, you look at it and see, that kind of looks like a brick. But if you find 500 of them and they're stacked 3 feet high and 50 feet long in a wall, those are bricks, and that's a wall, folks. And when you start experiencing enough stuff, after a while, you can't explain it any other way. If you hear a howl, when I first started, I learned how to be a caller. And you've heard anybody that watched Finding Bigfoot, knew about how Bobo would get out there and do that howl thing. Well, I can do that too, and I did it, and I got answers a few times, but after a while, you start realizing that there's way more to it than that. And you start realizing that, we're talking about the paranormal. Maybe extra normal would be a better term than paranormal, because it's stuff that's beyond what we can believe. And the forest people, they might be capable of stuff that we are not mentally equipped to believe. They might be able to do stuff that we can't even fathom that they can do. And as time goes on, we hope to learn more and more. And we hope to be able to answer our own questions. But it seems like every time we learn something, we'll learn a fact, and it'll open up about 5-6 more questions that we don't know.
Yeah,
and it's an amazing journey. I think anybody that's willing to go out there, the term is with a good heart and an open mind, and put the time in, put the boots on the ground time in, they can do the same thing we're doing. We're nothing special. But we seem to have developed a rapport with the forest people in the area that we're at. And I've experienced it in other locations as well, to where once they kind of know who you are, and they decide you're okay, they will respond to you.
Yeah. And like you say, you've got to put the time in, haven't you? This isn't just going to happen by going once in a blue moon and spending an hour in the forest. You've got to put time.
You can't run up there on a weekend camping trip once a year and expect anything to happen, because you got to go out there and you got to put in the time. Kevin probably right now we're in the state of Arizona, and Kevin probably puts more boots on the ground time out there than anybody else in the state. And I maybe do a third of what he does, but we've experienced stuff that, many times we've sat there and looked at each other and said, I have no idea what that was. And we try
or how do you explain it to somebody?
Yeah, you try to explain it to somebody else, and they immediately think that you've gone Looney Tunes or something.
Yeah.
But everything that we talk about has happened.
You can't brush off the experiences either. Just like trying to rationalize something that you've experienced with, oh well, it was just this, it was just that. At that point, you're taking away that experience from yourself, and not realizing what it was. You take it away from yourself. Like I mentioned before, when you see what you see, in your rational part of your brain says, "Did I really see what I saw?" And what you saw, but your brain's trying to explain it away, and you have to not do that as well. Take the experience in and realize what it was.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot to process, isn't it? Let alone find the answers. I'm just going to stick some more questions up because they're coming through. Have you ever noticed a connection with anything, the colour blue? Some say they like the colour blue.
I have taken out. I've heard the thing about blue, and I've also heard about the marbles, and you know, I had an interesting thing happen with the marbles one time. Me and a couple other friends, we were out in a location, and I just like out of the blue, I started walking off to the right, and they're like, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I got to walk over here for something," and I walked over. You know, out in the middle of nowhere, and pick up this marble, and it was a green marble. But a lot of times I will use, you know, like those little glass beads that you'd put in a flower pot or something. And I'll set those out in you know, in different patterns, and they'll rearrange them. But I really haven't done much with anything with the color blue, and I just don't think there's a need for it personally. I mean, do they like blue? I don't know.
Some people said, yeah, they seem to be attracted to the colour blue, or they take things that are blue. So I think Snow White Bigfoot's had some experience with that, and Carl's asking for some reason as well. I think there was something blue in his yard. Sorry, Carl, I can't quite remember. The Lost Cryptids Conservatory, ever asked about their history and what they are?
Yes, and all I get is the people.
Yeah. We asked them one night when they were rather chatty, and there was an elder there. In fact, the Yadengan was there, and we asked him, because we asked him point blank if he was there, and he said he was. And we asked him, we said, "We call ourselves humans. What do you call yourselves?" The people. That was the only answer they gave us. That was the same night we asked them about healing, and they said all can heal. And
yeah, I've just missed one. Sorry. So, what are your individual opinions on what Bigfoot are? I don't think we know, do we?
I think I think that they're an energy-based life form, and I think that they have the capability of putting thoughts in our head, or putting and you know, maybe I wrestle with the thing as to whether or not when we think we see one, I've wrestled with it whether we're really seeing it or whether they just put a thought in our head telling us we're seeing it. And it brings to mind a story out of I think it was Idaho or something, where there was a guy in a vehicle was driving down the road, and he saw a Sasquatch on the far side of the guardrail standing right next to the road. And as he drove by, he got this distinct message in his head: "You didn't see me." And you know, and his reaction was, "Well, yeah, I did." And his, "No, you didn't see me." And it was putting that thought in his head that he didn't actually see what he just knows that he just saw.
Yeah. What I know is that they are not some dumb mountain ape. They are a people with abilities far beyond us. Their level of intelligence makes us look like ants, but their intelligence has gone a different direction than what ours is. We kind of tend to think that we're intelligent because we can run computers and drive cars and do whatever, and that's what we base our intelligence level on, or how many years did you go to school and how many pieces of paper do you have hanging on a wall. Their level of intelligence is mind-boggling.
What do you think, Scott?
I wish I had an answer about what they are. I honestly have no idea. I know what I've experienced. I know that I've had a nighttime sighting. I know I've seen shimmering images. I know I've heard their language. When they with the clicking and the popping. I've heard that. What they are, I wish I had an answer for. I guess that's why we're here talking, right?
Sharon R. Hello, Daniela. Please ask them this. Have they ever had any military or government approach them about seeing the Bigfoot?
No, I have not. And I'm ex-military. The only thing that I can say about that is my primary location, the Forest Service, closed the area down and would not give me a straight answer of why this particular area was closed down. And I even have one of my friends works for the Forest Service, and when I told them what the excuses were, they were giving me here's one of the excuses of why they closed the area down and wouldn't let anybody in there, because they were worried about a tree falling on somebody. This is the forest.
Yeah, there's millions of trees out there, and they're worried about what's one spot. What I can say about that is I have not had that direct experience with anybody. Obviously the Men in Black or whatever have not contacted me, but I will say that based on what I've learned in the relatively short period of time that I've been doing this, I can't possibly imagine that government at some level does not know what's going on. Somewhere along the line, they have to. It's not that difficult to get to where we are now, or at least to get to the point where they're real. Maybe two-way communication is a little stretching it, but somewhere along the line, they got to know.
And they have to. They've recently released, UFO documentation.
Right.
So if they've released UFO documentation, they had that documentation, and they, just recently released it. What they have to know about, the people. They have to know about Sasquatch, Bigfoot.
Well, I've done an awful lot of research, and I've both in the, in the serious sounding theories as well as some of the crackpot theories. And I just believe at some point in time, at some place they have to know. And why they don't come out and admit it, I have no idea. But somewhere along the line, at some level, they must know.
What's interesting is that, and I've said this before, is that there's not been one single whistleblower. There's not been one person over all these years that maybe is in the know has ever come out and gone, I just find that very strange, because there must be a lot of people who know this. It can't just be a small secret. This it might be, limited to who knows, but eventually over time, new people are coming into the what it is knowing what this is.
I've read quite a few accounts. I've read quite a few accounts of retired federal employees that after they retired, they came out and admitted that they knew, that they knew about it. As to their credibility, I don't know. I'm probably not qualified to judge their credibility, but the stuff that they said, pretty much is in line with some of the stuff that I've experienced.
Yeah, but saying they know about it and saying they know what it is another thing, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. Well, what I will say on that is, I think the reason that the government let me back up. I absolutely believe the government 100% knows they're there. I don't think that they admit it because it's not something they can control. Once again, they're so much smarter than us. Their abilities far supersede anything that we can match. Just in their physical form, the speed, how fast they can move, is mind-boggling. I watched one cover a distance of probably about 100 yards in a matter of seconds. and you know, to the point where I was second guessing what I actually saw, but I know what I saw.
Carl's asking, have you ever seen one running and can you explain it? And I think he means is the way they move, this smooth.
This one that I was just talking about, it was at nighttime, but it was pretty bright out. And by the time I realized what I was seeing, it was gone. Yeah, and it covered the distance of probably about 90 yards, maybe 100 yards at best. And it was just, and it was gone.
And the interesting thing about that is that they can run, they can run, and they will not make a sound, and they will not leave a track. They leave tracks when they want to. They make noise when they want to, but they can move. They can move through the forest at speeds that we can't comprehend, as quiet as a ninja. Do we know how they do that? No, we don't.
Yeah. Carl actually found a track in his backyard. Just an outline of it on cement, almost like an oil or a resin was left off the foot. It imprinted on the cement path. He just said something here. Well, yeah, he's just said there, a 7-inch footprint on cement.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I find tracks all the time, and you know, the largest track I found was 10.5 inches across at the toes, 23 inches in length. And I actually saw that individual for about a second, and I'm telling you, it's flipping massive.
We did a recreation on that one.
Yeah. And you know, I heard a branch break like over here, and I immediately looked over here because I know how fast they move, and I just saw him go by. I was able to judge about how tall he was because of some trees that were behind him, and I could only see about 1.5 to 2 feet at the top of these trees that were about 14 feet tall. Made no more noise than a butterfly, you know, and if I had to put a guess to what he weighed, I'd say 1,600 pounds.
Wow.
You know, the barrel of his chest, from his chest to his back, he was probably 3 feet thick.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, like Chuck said, he's 6 foot tall. And when we did the recreation and I put Chuck there, that's when I really got floored at how massive this actually was.
Yeah, I can bet.
Whenever we've had a sighting, we've tried to do a recreation, and Kevin has a laser rangefinder, so we can get exact distance if we know exactly where it was. This particular one, the tops of the trees were about 13, 14 foot tall, and this one was maybe 3 foot below the top of the trees was the top of his head.
Wow.
So that would make him almost twice my size.
That's incredible. I think we've got your friend in the chat, WWD. I don't know who that is, but I know both Chuck and Kevin well. I've been out with them. It's hard to wrap my head around some of it. You couldn't pay either of them to exaggerate. So there's lots of you experiencing this. And there was actually another guy who commented on when you were on the researcher's report that had met you out there with the, why was it Paul? Someone called Paul, I think.
That one was Rob. From the researcher's report, that was Rob.
Oh, right.
No, Rob had commented on one of the previous ones.
Yeah, I don't know who did that last comment, but whoever it was, thank you very much. We appreciate your support.
Yeah,
it could be someone called. It could be Wayne.
Wayne.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Wayne.
Yeah.
I missed your call today.
Have you ever tried to see them on FLIR?
No, I don't have any FLIR equipment, and honestly, I don't need to. I see them enough that you know, especially at night. I can't even begin to count how many night sightings I've had, and I'm not talking just shimmering images or the distortion or.
Yeah.
You know, I've had 5 solid daytime sightings. but the nighttime, you know, when they're moving around camp, you know, and you know, when there's a full moon out, you know, you get to see a lot more, but they come in a lot closer when it's completely dark.
Yeah. Robert Cope asked Chuck about the flower on the seat.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Rob. How are you doing? Rob and his family have camped in this one particular area for quite a number of years.
25 years.
Yeah, 25 years. And it happens to be right next to a place that we've been started going. And so when we first met them, they had a ATV out there. And so I was asking them about, you know, possible things that they've experienced, and they were kind of open to the idea. And I asked them, I said, you know, sometimes they'll leave you presents. Has there ever been a time that you came out in the morning and there was a flower on the seat of your ATV? And his wife looked like you could have knocked her over with a feather, because they had experienced that. Wow. And so there's a very good possibility that, you know, that one of them put that idea in my head and told me to ask that question. I don't know.
I believe so, because, you know, we like talking to people, especially, you know, when we're up there in the mountains, and I've never heard Chuck ask somebody if they've ever found a flower on their seat. Yeah. So welcome to the party, Rob.
Yeah. We had an interesting experience. We had one thing they will do is a lot of times they're very, very polite, and they will, if you leave food out, they may take your food, but they don't take all of it. And we had one particular instance where we had a box of cookies sitting out, and these were the big supermarket cookies from the bakery. And we set the box out, left the box sitting outside, and we inventory stuff before we go to bed. And there was 9 cookies in the box. And the next morning we went and checked, and there was 8. So one of them came in, opened the box, took 1 cookie. Now, what does that? If it would have been a bear or anything else, it would have knocked the box on the ground, made a big mess, eaten them all. Had another incident where another researcher, and this was before I even met Kevin, but she had a trailer that she had her ATV on, and she put 7 apples out on the rail on the side of her trailer, and then photographed them so we could make sure that we knew if anything had been moved. Next morning, she came out and they took 1 apple off of one end and 1 apple off the other end, left all the rest of them untouched. Now, what does that?
Yeah, that is, I'm going to say strange again, but you know, it is, isn't it? What's interesting is, like, if they are this shimmering foam, why do they need to eat? I know that sounds a bit dumb, but how can they take how can there be in 2 forms, one a physical form and one an energy form, and still be you know, wanting to eat?
Yeah,
once again, this is a single set paradigm that it either has to be physical or it has to be energy. And if it's this, how come it can't do that? You need to let go of that and just accept that, you know, they do what they do when they do it. You know, it's, you know, once again, going back into the quantum sciences that, you know,
yeah,
people get stuck into the traditional science, and that's only good for explaining things in our physical world. Anything outside of our normal physics, you have to go into the quantum, and I don't know. I don't know the answers to that.
Yeah.
I just accept that, you know, this is what we experience. You know, I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody. I just share what happens.
Yeah.
And you know, why? I don't know.
The logic would say that as far as the taking donuts and something like that, the logic would tell you that they locate where the donut is. They decide they want it. And maybe they transform into their solid form long enough to grab the donut and eat it, and then they go back. I don't know.
My only thought on that, what I feel, I going back to what Chuck said a while ago, a living energy. Living things need some type of nourishment. Plants need sun and water. They don't. That's how they eat. It's anything living. Requires some type of nourishment, and it's a living energy. Whereas the difference between we'll say a ghost or a spirit, they're just an energy, not a living energy. And whereas Sasquatch is a living energy.
So complicated, isn't it?
Well, it's only complicated if you make it complicated.
Yeah. What about ley lines? Do you think ley lines have anything to do with?
I don't know. And I've thought about that a few times. I really don't know. I could come up with some wild answer to it, but I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot more that we don't know than what we do. I'm familiar with what ley lines are, but I have found nothing to indicate that they have anything to do with the forest people. But then on the same token, I don't begin to claim that I know everything about them.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see if anything happens to pass through any of those spots.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
What's also interesting is that does it really matter about ley lines and the location if they can follow you home or be in your house or be in your area? Did you say something had followed you back?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Kevin's had him in his house. I've had him in my house.
So they can appear. When does that happen? Are you thinking about them, or are they just something happened and you realize they're there?
The first time it happened for me was early 2018. Here in the Arizona, they have the Renaissance Festival, and it's not far from my house. And so my wife and my youngest daughter, myself, we went out there to go enjoy the festivities, and it just happened to be the busiest day they had. And being my right eye is prosthetic, bouncing off people left and right, and people, what are you doing? And and my PTSD, and I just started. And I got, couldn't find anywhere to sit down. My knee and my ankles were killing me, and I was just a wreck. I became a basket case. I was like, we're out of here. Came home, and even my medication wasn't helping me. So I was like, I'm going to bed. And so I was laying in bed, and I was saying my prayers, and I felt this very light touch on my shoulder and my head. And I was, rolling over, fully expecting to see my wife standing there, comforting me. And there's this shimmering image, this distortion right next to my bed. And I went, is that you, Indy? Yes, you need to go to bed. And I was out. I woke up the next morning feeling like $1 million. So don't know how to explain it, but it happened.
Yeah.
And that's happened more than once, but that was the most pronounced.
Yeah. Sharon, now Bigfoot do not transform. They are living species. This is your experience, and everyone's got their own experience with it. And we don't know, do we? We don't know whether they're living or what they are.
Well, what I can tell you is that the last sighting I had, this was September.
Yeah, about last September.
Yeah. I was sitting there, and I heard a branch break, and I kind of looked off to my left at this grouping of trees that is on the other side of the little 2-track road from the camp. And I saw a figure standing there, but I couldn't quite tell if I was seeing a figure or if it was just darkness in the trees. And so I kind of out loud said, "Am I seeing you?" And then he starts doing this. I'm like, "Okay, I see you." And I got up. I never blinked, never took my eye off him, and I walked directly towards him. When I got about 30 feet away from me, gone.
Yeah, obviously your commenter there, I just caught a glimpse of that, but obviously your commenter has a right to their opinion.
Yep.
But our experiences have led us to believe otherwise.
Good answer. Johnny Diggs, have they ever had the opportunity to share knowledge with Ron Moorhead?
Actually, yes, I have been in contact with Ron Moorhead. I sent him some audio because I was interested in getting it to Scott Carpenter, but what Scott Carpenter is looking for is
Scott Nelson.
Scott Nelson. He's looking for full sentences, so that he can break down what's being said.
Yeah.
But yes, I've been in contact with Ron Moorhead.
Yeah.
And he does have some of my audio.
Yeah. I'm going to invite Ron on the show as well at some point. So maybe it'd be good to get you on anyway, just to chat about the whole quantum Bigfoot thing.
Absolutely, would love to.
Yeah. Do you think the young ones leave or join another clan there when they come eventually?
I would assume probably so. I don't see why they wouldn't.
Yeah. What's interesting is there's definitely a connection to wood. There seems to be a connection to wood, doesn't there? I know the forest called forest folk and forests are full of wood, but it just seems a bit, when you're talking about it, like wood is an important thing to them, that they kind of communicate with it. Do you think anything like that?
That they communicate with it?
Well, if they're doing the wood knocks, if they're making the structure.
Well, actually, I don't for a minute believe that they're out walking around beating on trees with sticks. I've had the wood knock 20 feet away from me when I was in my tent, about 4 feet outside of his van, and he didn't hear it. But it sounded like somebody took a Louisville slugger to the side of a tree. Absolutely sounded like wood on wood. But let me ask you a question. If your hands are really huge.
Yeah.
We think that they make that sound. We don't think it actually is tree. We think they make that sound. They mimic a lot of stuff. We've had them mimic all kinds of things. And they whistle and they'll make the wood knock sounds. They make the rock click sounds. Maybe they're clicking their tongue or something. I don't know. But they don't walk around with rocks in their pockets because they don't have pockets, and they don't walk around carrying clubs. And I've experienced back when I was doing wood knocks, and I still occasionally might do one. But when I was doing wood knocks, I've had them answer me almost instantaneously, and they didn't have time to go find a stick and go find a tree and all that kind of stuff. But they would make that sound back to me, and I think they're somehow able to do that. I'm not sure exactly how they do it, but I'm sure I believe they're actually able to make that sound without actually physically, hitting a tree with a stick. Yeah.
I've heard some audio recently off a guy. I'm hoping he might come on the show actually, and he's captured a lot of this clicking and popping, and kind of sounds like a stream, a little river, a little like waterfall, maybe, of water trickling. It's
Well, what? Okay, this clicking and the popping. I run about 10 hours of audio every night I'm out, over 200 nights out. A lot of audio to go through. And what I have come to figure out is that this clicking and popping is actually part of their vocabulary, kind of the way they talk. If you think about like Aborigines and, you know, some of those other tribes down in the rainforest in Brazil or what have you, that will, you know, have clicks and pops in their communication. I can tell you firsthand, I have had personal interaction where I've talked to them and they've responded to me with the clicks, with the pops. You know, they're outside of my tent. Are you happy I'm back? Click. Do you want me to leave? So you're happy I'm here? Click.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Danielle, it's funny you mentioned the it sounded like a creek or a you know a small like you know
stream or something.
Like stream. It's funny you make that you make that that connection. In Crazy Town, there's a small stream that runs past where I usually set up my tent, and because I've listened to Kevin's audio and I've heard the clicks and the pops, and there was one specific night I was up there with my son and Kevin, and Kevin's tent was I would say 15 feet away or so, 10 feet away from where I usually put my tent.
Probably close to 30, 40 feet.
Oh, is it 40? Anyway, I'm right next to the creek, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard the clicks and the pops, but it wasn't coming from the direction of the creek. It was coming from the direction of where Kevin's tent was. And if I didn't know what I had heard on Kevin's audio, I believe I made that same connection to or comment to Kevin that it sounded like the creek. If I didn't know that it wasn't the creek making that sound, I would have said, "Hey, it's the creek," and would have brushed it off and not given a second thought.
Yeah. I said to him, he next to water. He says, I'm nowhere near water. It was, you know, there was water around him, but nowhere near enough to pick up. And it was just like water trickling, you know, very light. And
I've got stuff like that on audio.
Yeah. Anyone got any more questions? Because we've covered quite a lot. We'll go another 10 minutes if anyone's got any questions. Have you ever seen any evidence of tool making or using fire?
No.
Okay. That was, have you seen them in trees?
Have I seen them in trees?
Trees, yeah.
Them climbing up into the tree?
Yeah.
I've heard that the young ones do it. I personally have not seen it.
The stuff that you've done with the BRFO, Chuck, were you getting any reports of this sort of stuff before you realised that there is this sort of stuff going on?
I'm sorry, can you say again? I didn't catch that.
Well, when you've been with the BRFO and you've investigated reports in the past, has there been any sort of descriptive stuff, you know, the same stuff that you're experiencing before you experienced it? Were you hearing about stuff like this and maybe going, now that doesn't kind of, you know, make sense?
The BFRO as an organization they believe that these are flesh and blood beings, and they don't believe in the paranormal aspect. And so, you know, my activity with the BFRO, of course I have to respect that.
Yeah.
I have had reports that I've investigated that have basically aligned with what my own research has taught me as well. And, you know, but I respect the BFRO's position, and I try to follow their guidelines when I'm actually when I'm working for them, so to speak. And of course, we're all volunteers. We're not paid for that, but I try to follow what they say and what their opinion is. But my own experiences just led me across the line into the paranormal.
Yeah. You've got fans.
We love you too.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Well, if anyone's not got any more questions, we'll have to have you back on. I know we've done 2 hours, but there's so much more to cover, I think. And it'd be good to hear how you're getting on and how it's progressing and stuff like that. You know, I'd definitely be interested. Oh, we've got one last one here. How about the tree structures like the X's, the tridents, the Selenas? Pinned down?
Yeah, I find them all over the place.
Yeah, we find them all over the place.
But you don't know why.
In many cases, we don't know what they mean, and that's one of the things we'd like to learn about.
Yeah.
In some cases, I think they're territorial markers. In some cases, I think they're travel way markers. I followed travel ways for quite some distance by following the snaps and that kind of thing. We'd like to, and of course, Kevin mentioned about the teepee structures or memorials. We're still in the process of trying to learn about these things, and it'd be very nice someday if they would let us into their world a little bit, which I've experienced a little bit of that, but that may be a story for another time.
Yeah, and my goals for this year, Daniela, is I'm planning on spending 120 days out, which will basically be between the months of April through October.
Okay, that'll be interesting.
So I I'll give you a shout and let you know when I'm going to be around, but I'm planning on spending a lot of time out this year.
Yeah. Well, that'll definitely be great to hear about. I did have something else to ask, but I can't remember now. I'm sorry. Yeah, let's get you back. Do any of you guys practice mindful meditation?
Periodically, I do. Yes.
I've attempted it.
Okay.
I'm very good at it.
Scott?
No, I guess I do try to clear my mind of things, especially when you're up in that type of environment, where it's a peaceful environment, and you want to clear your mind of your day-to-day weekly activities and get up there and have an open mind and clear your thoughts and really experience what you're experiencing. I don't know if that's meditation, but it's, I try to be mindful of feeling that way and clear mind, when I'm in that environment, for sure.
Is there any chance, have you thought about it? Would you do it? Could you get any evidence off them? Could you get any hair off them?
Oh, I've got some possible hair samples. I found scat. Well, we've got a couple minutes. Why don't you throw that face print up?
Yeah. Not sure which one it is. We'll just take a risk here. There's a few I've got. There we go. That's one. I'll go in a bit closer. Now that looks like the mouth, obviously, doesn't it?
Yeah. That was a juvenile. And I'd personally seen this juvenile about a week before this print actually happened, and that's my wife come up because she thought I was losing my mind, and I convinced her to come up, and she got to experience some stuff, and when we left, it was about 18 miles to get out, and down dirt roads. And we'd stopped at a restroom, and she gets out of her truck, comes over to mine and says, "Is that a face print on my window?" And I went, "Yeah, it is." But yeah, I get handprints and fingerprints and face prints and just all kinds of stuff like that. But once again, I'm not out trying to prove or disprove the existence of anything. And I've kind of leaned away from trying to gather evidence. It's like trying to gather evidence of a dog. They're just that real to me.
Yeah.
I don't even get excited over footprints anymore. Rob, he found his first footprint, and he was giddy about it. But it's really cool when you find the physical evidence like that, and it's going back to the paradigm thing.
This is your grandson, isn't it? And these are tracks you found.
Yeah.
They're very wide, aren't they?
Yep.
The interesting thing about that trackway is they told him where to go look for that.
Right.
And when he went over and looked for it, it was there.
Yep.
But other than that, he would not have known to go look for it.
Wow.
But I forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah. It's getting late.
Don't let your beliefs dictate your experiences. Let your experiences dictate your beliefs, except you were using the word paradigm.
Yeah. But there was something else I was going to say, and it escapes me now. So,
well, after a while, you get enough bricks in the wall, so to speak, that they're real. There's absolutely no doubt that they're real. The question still remains is that we need to learn a lot more about them so that we in our own feeble minds can understand what they really are. And that, but I'm like Kevin, I gave up a long time ago trying to prove to anybody they exist. I know they exist.
Yeah.
There's absolutely, I mean, I've seen them and I can't unsee them. They've talked to me and I can't unexperience that.
Yeah.
They've laid hands on me. I can't unexperience that. So the question is trying to develop enough of a rapport with them so that they will kind of let you enough into their world so that we can understand what they really are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I'm at. Would I like to have a good solid daytime sighting? Would I like one to walk out of the woods and go up to me and shake my hand? Sure, I would. But I'm willing to accept and deal with them on their terms and to try to learn more about them.
Yeah. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming on tonight, all of you, and sharing your experiences. And it isn't about proving what's out there. It's just sharing, what's going on. And I hope you find some answers, or, and if you do, come on and let us know what they are. So once again, Scott, thank you. Kevin, Chuck, I've really enjoyed talking to you tonight. We'll catch up again sometime, definitely. Thanks everyone who's been in the chat tonight and got involved and asked questions. I'll be here next Friday. I'll be back on the Researchers Report tomorrow night, and I hope to see you all then. But until then, have a good night, everyone, and thanks a lot.
Yep.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, Daniel.